Welcome, dear listeners. Crafting stories like this takes considerable time and effort. If you enjoy this narrative and like to support the creation, please consider subscribing to Twilight Moonlit channel. This is a longer story, so feel free to save and return later if you're unable to finish it in at once. Long ago, in the heart of Weset-Minos, an ancient city bathed in golden sunlight and shrouded in the haze of myth, there stood a labyrinth that whispered the secrets of the gods. Its walls stretched high into the heavens, each stone etched with the markings of those long gone, forgotten pharaohs, divine beings, and creatures who walked between worlds. The labyrinth was not just a maze, it was a living entity, a keeper of mysteries so vast that only the bravest or the most foolish would dare seek them. No one knew who built the labyrinth. Its origins were lost to time, wrapped in the folds of ancient power. The legend spoke of a beast, a creature born of both man and bull, who guarded its entrance, a creature with eyes that glowed like embers and a body forged from the very stones of the earth. This was the Minotaur, Asterius, a divine being bound to the labyrinth by an oath that could never be broken. His existence, his purpose, and his curse were as intertwined as the very corridors of the maze he was bound to protect. For centuries, the labyrinth had remained undisturbed, a monument to forgotten times, its depths hidden from mortal eyes. The Minotaur, alone in his prison, had waited. But as the ages passed, the world outside changed. Empires rose and fell, kings came and went. The earth itself seemed to shift and tremble with the weight of the knowledge that lay buried in the heart of the labyrinth. One day, when the sun dipped low in the sky and the air grew thick with the scent of dust and old stone, the labyrinth stirred. The winds, which had once been still, now howled through the maze's intricate passages. The ancient walls groaned with a life of their own, and the earth beneath the labyrinth trembled. Asterius the Minotaur stood at the center of the maze, his mighty form casting a shadow that stretched like a dark omen across the stone floor. His keen senses told him something had changed, something was coming. The Minotaur's eyes, ever watchful, scanned the twisting pathways of the labyrinth. He could feel it, the stirring of something ancient, something long forgotten. The time had come. The Scepter of Amun-Ra, the artifact of unimaginable power, had begun to awaken from its slumber. Asterius had heard the whispers of this power before, in the quiet moments when the winds carried tales from distant lands. The scepter was said to hold the key to controlling the forces of life and death, the power to reshape the world. And yet, the Minotaur knew the danger it posed. In the wrong hands, it could bring destruction beyond measure. But the scepter was not just a weapon. It was a symbol, a beacon of hope or despair, depending on who sought it. The gods themselves had entrusted its protection to Asterius, binding him to the labyrinth for all eternity. His task was clear: keep the scepter safe, no matter the cost. And now something was coming. Someone Some force was drawing near. The Minotaur's gaze shifted towards the entrance of the labyrinth. Through the shadowed corridors, a figure approached, a mortal perhaps, or something else entirely. The air grew heavy, thick with the presence of an unseen visitor. Asterius clenched his fists, the echoes of his powerful muscles reverberating through the stone beneath him. The labyrinth would not give up its secrets easily, and the scepter was not something that could be claimed without a price. Asterius could feel it, the weight of fate pressing upon him. The ancient powers that governed the world were stirring, and the time had come for the Minotaur to fulfill his purpose. But the scepter was more than just a key to power. It was a test of worth, of character, and of destiny. Would the one who sought it be worthy? The air within the labyrinth was thick with the scent of ancient stone and the dust of forgotten centuries. Every step taken within its winding corridors seemed to echo throughout the maze, as if the walls themselves were watching. The path before the seeker twisted, turned, and forked, offering no clear direction. Each turn seemed to lead deeper into the heart of the labyrinth, where the very air grew heavier and the silence more profound. Asterius paced the vast expanse of his domain, ever vigilant. His body, a fusion of man and beast, moved with a grace that belied his enormous size. His senses were sharp, attuned to every shift in the wind, every vibration in the ground. He could feel the intruder's presence growing closer, the vibrations of footsteps reverberating through the stone. The time for silence was over. The scepter, the prize sought by many, had been disturbed. The labyrinthine passages that wound around the Minotaur's world were filled with traps and obstacles, each one designed to test the strength, wit, and spirit of those who dared to venture inside. Few ever returned, and those who did were often broken, both in body and in mind. For the labyrinth did not merely guard its secrets, it sought to claim the souls of those who entered. Asterius had seen many who had come, seeking glory, power, or knowledge. None had ever left. The labyrinth had a way of wearing down even the strongest wills. It twisted and turned, confusing even the most determined of seekers, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and darkest desires. But this time was different. This time, the scepter's awakening had stirred something far greater than the Minotaur's ancient vigilance. It had awakened the power of the gods themselves. And Asterius knew that this would be a trial like no other. The seeker would not be the only one to face the labyrinth's tests. The Minotaur, too, would be tested. As the first rays of sunlight cut through the thick fog that enveloped the lands surrounding the labyrinth, a figure clad in worn, dark robes approached the stone entrance. His steps were measured and deliberate, the sound of his boots muffled by the soft earth beneath. The intruder, Theron, had journeyed across desolate mountains and scorching deserts, all for the sake of one thing, the Scepter of Amun-Ra. A scholar by trade, Theron had spent his life studying ancient texts, unlocking the secrets of lost civilizations. yet nothing had prepared him for the whispers of the labyrinth or the myths surrounding the beast who guarded it. They said it was not just a creature of flesh and bone, but a being born of divine wrath, bound to the labyrinth by an ancient curse. Asterius, the Minotaur, the guardian of the scepter. Theron paused before the entrance, taking a deep breath. His heart raced in anticipation, but there was something else in his chest, a primal instinct that told him danger lurked within. He ignored the feeling. This was his destiny. The stone walls of the labyrinth loomed before him, their weathered surfaces covered in moss and age-old inscriptions. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The scepter was said to hold the power to reshape the world, to control the very forces of creation and destruction. But it was more than that. It was the key to a prophecy, one that spoke of an ancient balance that would soon be tested. Theron entered the labyrinth, the air thick with the scent of damp stone. The path before him twisted and turned, leading him deeper into the maze. His lantern flickered in the gloom, casting long, shifting shadows that danced across the walls. Strange symbols carved into the rock flashed by, their meaning lost to time. For hours, Theron wandered the winding corridors, each step carrying him further into the heart of the labyrinth. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. There were no sounds of creatures, no echoes of life, only the eerie stillness of a place long forgotten by the world. But then, as if summoned by his presence, a sound pierced the silence, a low growl that seemed to reverberate from the very walls. Theron froze, his breath caught in his throat. The sound grew louder, more insistent, until it was joined by the heavy footsteps of something or someone moving in the darkness ahead. Theron tightened his grip on the lantern, his pulse quickening. This was it. The guardian of the labyrinth, the Minotaur. The growl became a snarl, echoing through the corridor as the creature's massive form emerged from the shadows. Asterius, the divine Minotaur, stood before him, towering and imposing. His eyes burned with a fiery intensity, and the golden crown upon his brow gleamed in the dim light. "Who dares enter my domain?" Asterius' voice boomed, resonating with an ancient power that sent a shiver down Theron's spine. It was a voice that spoke of ages past, of an eternal burden. "Speak your name, intruder, for none who enter this place leave unchanged." Theron stepped forward, his mind racing. He had studied the legends, but nothing had prepared him for the raw presence of the creature before him. "I am Theron," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "I seek the Scepter of Amun-Ra. I am the one who is destined to wield it." Asterius' eyes narrowed, and the growl that had rumbled in his throat deepened. "You seek that which was never meant to be possessed," he rumbled. "The scepter is not a tool for the weak. It is a force that bends the very fabric of existence. Only those who understand its power can claim it, and yet none who have come before you have returned." Theron swallowed hard. "I have studied the scepter's secrets. I am prepared. I must retrieve it to fulfill my destiny." Asterius stepped closer, his massive hooves echoing like thunder against the stone floor. "You speak of destiny," the Minotaur said, his voice soft but filled with menace. "But destiny is not a path. It is a burden, one that comes with a cost." Theron stood his ground, despite the fear threatening to overwhelm him. "I am willing to pay whatever cost is necessary." Asterius stared down at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a low, rumbling sigh, he spoke again. "Then you shall face the trials of the labyrinth. Only those who can endure its challenges may claim the scepter. But know this, many have tried before you, and all have failed. The labyrinth does not yield to the unworthy." Without another word, the Minotaur turned and disappeared into the shadows, his form melting into the darkened passages of the labyrinth. Theron stood still, heart racing, as the echoes of the Minotaur's departure faded into the silence. Theron knew that the true trial had begun. The first trial. Theron had ventured deeper into the labyrinth, its twisting corridors and narrow paths becoming more intricate with every turn. His lantern barely illuminated the darkness, casting only brief glimmers of the stone walls that seemed to close in on him. The air grew thick with an unsettling sense of foreboding, as though the very walls were watching him, listening to his every step. For hours he had wandered, hoping to stumble upon the next trial, yet the labyrinth seemed endless. It was as if the maze had a mind of its own, shifting, changing, and teasing him. Every turn led to yet another fork, each one more confusing than the last. But Theron knew better than to succumb to panic. He had trained for this. His mind was sharp and his resolve unwavering. As he rounded yet another corner, his lantern cast light upon an opening in the stone. A vast chamber stretched before him, its walls covered in cryptic symbols. The air hummed with an eerie energy, as though some force pulsed through the very stones of the room. The chamber was round, with a large stone pedestal at its center. On the pedestal sat a single object, a golden sphere, its surface reflecting the dim light of Theron's lantern. A deep voice, echoing from every corner of the chamber, suddenly filled the air. It was not the growl of Asterius, nor the whisper of the labyrinth itself. It was the voice of the labyrinth's creators, speaking from beyond time and space. "You have entered the first trial," the voice intoned. "To pass, you must solve the riddle of the labyrinth. Only then shall the path to the scepter be revealed. Fail, and you will be lost within these walls forever." Theron stood tall, the words resonating in his mind. A riddle. He had prepared for this. The ancient texts he had studied often spoke of trials that tested wisdom and wit, but this was something far beyond any riddle he had ever encountered. "The riddle is this," the voice continued, its tone growing more ominous. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind. What am I? Theron's mind raced. The answer must be hidden within the very structure of the labyrinth. He thought back to the scrolls he had read, to the ancient puzzles and riddles woven into the myths of old. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears, he muttered to himself, pacing the floor as his lantern swayed with his movement. No mouth, no ears. What could that be? He stopped in his tracks. The answer came to him like a flash of insight. It was something that had been all around him since he entered the labyrinth, something that had made its presence known in the very stillness of the maze. He had heard it earlier, the wind that seemed to move through the passages, whispering to him, guiding him. I know the answer, he said, more to himself than anyone else. It's an echo. The voice in the chamber grew silent for a long moment. Then, as if satisfied, it spoke again. Correct, it said. You have solved the riddle. The first trial is complete. A rumble shook the chamber, and the stone pedestal began to move, shifting aside to reveal a narrow passageway beyond. The air seemed to grow lighter, as though the oppressive weight of the labyrinth had been lifted, if only for a moment. Theron let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He had passed the first trial, but he knew the labyrinth was not yet through with him. There were many more trials ahead, each one more dangerous than the last, but for now he had made progress. The path forward had opened. He stepped through the newly revealed passage, his lantern held high, and began his journey into the depths of the labyrinth once more. Theron's path grew darker as he ventured deeper, the light from his lantern flickering in the oppressive gloom. The air was colder now, the stone beneath his feet slick with moisture. The sound of distant water dripping echoed through the hallways, amplifying the eerie silence that surrounded him. This time, the labyrinth felt different. It was as though something was watching him, waiting. Every shadow seemed to move. Every flicker of light played tricks on his mind. The deeper he went, the more he could feel the weight of the ancient magic that kept the labyrinth alive, and the more he realized the true nature of his quest. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet trembled. The walls seemed to ripple, and the air grew thick with an unnatural energy. A voice boomed through the corridor, shaking the very stones around him. Welcome to the second trial, the voice declared. Here you will face your greatest fear. Only by confronting it can you continue. Fail, and you will be consumed by your own terror. Theron's heart skipped a beat. His greatest fear. He had no idea what it was. For years he had sought knowledge, studied ancient texts, and braved countless dangers. But fear, that was something he had never truly understood. The labyrinth trembled again, and from the darkness ahead, a shadow began to take form. It was a figure, tall and cloaked in black, its face hidden beneath a hood. The figure stepped forward, and as it did, Theron felt an overwhelming sense of dread fill him. His pulse quickened, and a cold sweat broke out across his forehead. "You are not who you think you are," the figure whispered, its voice like 1,000 voices combined, echoing with mockery. "You are just a man, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Your quest is futile. You will never claim the scepter." Theron's knees felt weak, his mind racing. Doubt began to creep in. Was this true? Was he really insignificant? Could he truly claim the Scepter of Amun-Ra? The figure stepped closer, its presence suffocating. Theron could feel his resolve slipping, but he clenched his fists, determined not to let it consume him. This was his trial. He had faced many challenges before, but this was something different. "You are nothing," the figure continued, its voice now a cold, mocking whisper. "You are a fool, and you will die here, just like the rest." Theron took a deep breath and stepped forward, despite the growing sense of panic gnawing at him. He had studied the ancient myth, the great trials of the Labyrinth. He knew that to overcome this trial, he must face his fear head on, whatever it might be. "I am Theron," he said, his voice steady. "I am not a fool. I will claim what is mine, and I will not be consumed by fear." The figure faltered, its form beginning to distort and fade. The voice that had once been so overpowering grew weaker until it was no more than a whisper. Theron took another step forward. "I am not afraid," he repeated, his voice ringing through the chamber. With that, the figure vanished and the air cleared. The oppressive feeling lifted, and Theron felt his strength return. The second trial was complete, but as the darkness once again enveloped him, he knew that this was only the beginning. Theron's steps echoed through the narrow, winding corridors of the labyrinth as he moved forward. His lantern flickered in his hand, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The silence around him felt suffocating, but he pressed on, knowing that his path had now been set. The trials he had faced had tested his wit, his courage, and his very resolve, but the labyrinth still held secrets, dark secrets that he had yet to uncover. As he walked deeper, the temperature dropped further. He pulled his cloak tighter around himself and quickened his pace. The deeper he ventured, the more oppressive the air seemed. He felt an invisible weight on his shoulders, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. But he would not stop, not now, not when he was so close. Ahead, a faint glow illuminated the passage. Theron's curiosity piqued, and he moved toward it, his feet quickening. The glow grew stronger as he approached, revealing a massive stone door covered in intricate carvings. The symbols on the door were foreign to him, a mix of ancient Egyptian and Greco-Roman markings he could not decipher. As he neared the door, it began to pulse with a strange, rhythmic energy, as though it were alive. He placed a hand on the cold stone, feeling the vibrations through his fingertips. For a moment, the world around him seemed to stop. The only sound, the rhythmic pulse of the door itself. "Theron," a voice called softly. one that he had not heard in the trials. It was the same deep, resonant voice that had spoken to him when he first entered the labyrinth. You have come far, but this trial, this will be your greatest challenge. Theron stood still, his heart pounding. He had not expected this. The first 2 trials had been difficult, but this was different. The labyrinth, it seemed, was growing more sentient, more aware of him with every step he took. You have solved riddles and faced fear, but now you must confront something deeper. The heart of the labyrinth awaits you, and in it lies a truth that could change everything you believe. Are you prepared to face it? Theron hesitated. What did the voice mean by the heart of the labyrinth? What truth could lie ahead that was more challenging than what he had already faced? He steeled himself. I am ready. The door before him groaned and shifted, slowly creaking open as though it had not been disturbed in millennia. Beyond it lay a vast chamber, more magnificent than anything he had encountered so far. The walls were adorned with glowing symbols, casting an eerie light across the chamber. At the center of the room was a massive stone altar, surrounded by a strange, swirling mist that hovered just above the ground. Atop the altar lay an object, a small, intricately carved stone box. The box was the size of a human hand and was inscribed with the same cryptic symbols that adorned the walls. As Theron approached the altar, the voice returned, this time more solemn. To claim the Scepter of Amun-Ra, you must open the box. But be warned, the truth within is not for the faint of heart. It will reveal a secret that will change your understanding of everything, of your quest and of yourself. Theron's gaze fixed on the box. His heart raced. The truth. He had come so far to find the scepter, to claim it for his people, for his family. But now, standing before this mysterious artifact, he wondered if the price of knowledge was too steep. The voice continued, its tone echoing through the chamber. Only by facing the truth within the box can you proceed. If you refuse, you will remain trapped here in this heart of the labyrinth forever. Theron swallowed hard. He had faced many challenges, but this was different. This was not just about the scepter or the labyrinth. This was about who he was and what he stood for. He took a deep breath and reached out, his fingers brushing the smooth surface of the stone box. The moment he touched it, a jolt of energy coursed through his arm, a surge of power that made his body tremble. The lid of the box slowly began to rise, and a soft, whispering wind began to swirl around him. Inside the box was a single, ancient scroll. It was covered in dust, its edges frayed and yellowed with age. Theron carefully lifted it from the box, feeling the weight of the knowledge contained within it. As he unfurled the scroll, the text appeared to glow with an otherworldly light. The voice returned, softer now. Read it, Theron. Understand what it tells you, and know that it will change everything. Theron stared at the words before him, the ancient script flowing across the page. He began to read aloud, his voice echoing through the chamber. To the one who seeks the Scepter of Amun-Ra, know that your journey is not as it seems. The scepter is not a tool of power, but a key to something greater, a key to unlocking the past and the future. The labyrinth itself was not built to test the worth of mortals, but to guard the knowledge of the gods. The scepter will not bring glory, it will bring truth. And truth, Theron, is a burden few are capable of bearing. The words hit him like a physical blow. The scepter, the very object he had risked his life for, was not what he had believed it to be. It was not a weapon, not a symbol of power, but a key to something far greater and far more dangerous. Your path is not one of conquest, the scroll continued. You must decide, Theron. Will you bear the burden of the truth, or will you turn away and leave the labyrinth forever? Only you can make this choice. Theron's hands trembled as he held the scroll. The truth that the labyrinth guarded was not just a secret, it was a burden, one that could unravel everything he had ever known. Could he carry it? Could he bear the weight of such knowledge? The voice echoed again, this time with a hint of finality. The decision is yours. Choose wisely. Theron stood there, the scroll in his hands, the weight of the world pressing down on him. The truth had been laid bare before him, and now the greatest trial of all awaited. Would he accept the truth, or would he abandon his quest for the scepter? Theron stood motionless, the weight of the scroll heavy in his hands. The labyrinth around him seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as though the walls themselves were aware of his indecision. He had been prepared for trials, riddles, and dangers, but this was something altogether different. This was a question of destiny, of choice, of the very fabric of his being. The glowing symbols on the walls shimmered, and the eerie mist swirled at his feet. The voice, which had guided him so far, seemed to grow more distant, its presence no longer a constant hum, but a fading whisper, as if it too was waiting for his response. The glowing symbols on the walls shimmered, and the eerie mist swirled at his feet. The voice, which had guided him so far, seemed to grow more distant, its presence no longer a constant hum, but a fading whisper, as if it too was waiting for his response. "What will you do, Theron?" the voice asked softly. "The labyrinth offers no second chances. This is the final choice." Theron could feel the weight of the voice's words settle in his chest. He had come here seeking the Scepter of Amun-Ra, believing it would grant him the power to change his fate, to save his people. But now, the scepter appeared to be nothing more than a key to unlocking ancient truths that could very well reshape the world he knew. He closed his eyes, trying to steady his racing heart. The knowledge in the scroll was overwhelming. The scepter was not the instrument of power he had hoped for, but something far more elusive and dangerous. And it wasn't just the scepter's nature that weighed on him. It was the truth that came with it. The truth that would unravel everything he had ever believed in. As he opened his eyes, the scroll still gleaming in his hands, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The decision was his. His heart told him that the path ahead was one of sacrifice, but it also felt as if it were the only path he could take. The labyrinth had tested him with riddles and challenges, but now it was testing his very soul. Theron took a deep breath and spoke aloud, his voice barely a whisper but clear in the quiet of the chamber. "I accept." The moment he spoke the words, a great shudder ran through the labyrinth. The mist around his feet swirled and thickened, the glow from the symbols intensifying. The stone altar beneath him trembled, and the stone door that had once led him here groaned, its massive frame shifting as if the labyrinth itself were awakening. Theron stepped forward, feeling the gravity of his decision settling within him. The scroll, still in his hands, seemed to hum with power, as though the very act of accepting the truth had activated something deep within the labyrinth's heart. Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to move, shifting and sliding as if they were alive. The stone door at the far end of the room opened, revealing a new passageway, lit with a soft golden glow. The voice returned, louder now, filled with solemnity. "You have chosen to accept the burden of the truth, Theron. You will now face the final test. The labyrinth's heart will reveal the scepter's true nature to you. But beware, for once you witness the truth, you cannot turn back." Theron nodded silently. He understood the weight of his choice. There was no going back now. With one final glance at the altar, he moved toward the newly revealed passage. His feet felt heavier than before, as though the path ahead was not just a journey through the labyrinth, but a journey into the unknown depths of his own soul. The passageway was long, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly energy. The deeper he went, the more the symbols on the walls seemed to shift and change, their meanings growing clearer the farther he ventured. He could feel the labyrinth growing more sentient, aware of his every step, every thought. It was as though the ancient structure was alive, breathing, waiting for him to uncover its deepest secrets. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he reached the end of the passage. Before him stood an immense chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. The only light came from the glowing symbols etched into the stone walls, casting an ethereal glow that danced across the room. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone pedestal, upon which rested the Scepter of Amun-Ra. The scepter, glowing with a pale haunting light, was not the weapon of power he had imagined. It was not adorned with jewels or gold, but was a simple ancient staff, its surface carved with intricate runes that seemed to pulse with energy. Theron stepped forward, drawn to it, as if the scepter itself were calling to him. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch it. As his fingers brushed the cold stone, a vision flooded his mind. He saw himself, but not as he was now. He saw a younger version of himself, standing in a great hall, surrounded by scholars and priests. He saw the scepter in his own hands, and with it he saw the fall of empires, the rise of new powers, and the collapse of civilizations. He saw the death of kings and the birth of new gods. He saw history itself unraveling, as though the very fabric of time were being torn apart. The vision shifted, and Theron saw a great war, a battle between those who sought to control the truth of the scepter and those who sought to protect it. He saw kingdoms fall, and he saw the faces of those he had known, their lives intertwined with the scepter's power. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Theron breathless and shaken. The truth of the scepter was clear now. It was not a weapon, but a key to the past, to the gods, and to a power greater than any mortal could comprehend. He stepped back, his mind racing. The scepter was not something to be wielded for personal gain. It was a force of nature, a key to untold knowledge and unimaginable power. To claim it was to bear the responsibility of knowing the world's deepest secrets. The voice spoke once more, its tone solemn and final. "Theron, you have seen the truth. Will you take the scepter and bear its burden, or will you leave it and return to the world you know?" Theron looked at the scepter, the weight of his decision settling upon him. He understood now. The scepter was not a tool for power, but a vessel for truth. To wield it would mean to bear the weight of the world's history, to know its darkest secrets and its greatest triumphs. To leave it would mean returning to a life of ignorance, but also of peace. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the labyrinth's heart pressing down on him. It was not just a choice of destiny, it was a choice of who he wanted to be. Slowly, he reached out and grasped the scepter. As soon as Theron's fingers closed around the scepter, a surge of energy shot through him. It was like 1,000 stars bursting into existence within his veins, each one radiating with knowledge, ancient knowledge that had been locked away for millennia. His head swam with visions of far-off lands, of kings and queens long dead, of gods and demons that had walked the earth in the forgotten epochs of time. The labyrinth trembled beneath his feet as if it were reacting to the scepter's awakening. The air became thick with power, charged with an electric hum that filled every corner of the chamber. The symbols on the walls, which had once seemed like mere markings, now glowed with intense light, their meanings revealing themselves to Theron in an instant. He staggered back, his knees weak beneath him, as the weight of the knowledge he had just absorbed pressed heavily on his mind. The truth of the world lay bare before him, and it was as overwhelming as it was impossible to fully comprehend. The voice, which had guided him thus far, now spoke again, its tone filled with both reverence and sorrow. "You have claimed the scepter, Theron. You now bear the weight of the world's truths. The power of the gods, the secrets of the ancients, and the knowledge of forgotten realms are yours to wield. But know this, to carry such knowledge is not without consequence. The burden you now bear will not be easy." Theron closed his eyes, trying to steady his thoughts. The scepter hummed in his grasp, its power flowing through him like a river that could not be dammed. He felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. Every war, every act of betrayal, every triumph and defeat, all echoing within his mind. The scepter was not just a symbol of power, it was a mirror to the past, reflecting all the darkness and light that had shaped the world. And now Theron had to decide what to do with that power. Could he change the future by understanding the past, or would the knowledge consume him? The voice spoke again, this time softer, almost mournful. You have seen the scepter's power, but you must understand its true nature. It is not a weapon, nor a tool of control. It is a key, one that unlocks the secrets of the universe, of life and death, of creation and destruction. The scepter grants knowledge, but it does not grant wisdom. That is something you must find within yourself. Theron's heart beat faster as the weight of the voice's words sank in. He was not meant to wield this power for his own gain. The scepter could not give him what he had originally sought: dominion, control, or even the salvation of his people. It could only show him the truth, and what he did with that truth was entirely up to him. He took another steadying breath and looked down at the scepter, now fully understanding its true nature. The glowing symbols on its surface seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, each beat synchronizing with the flow of energy that radiated from the ancient staff. It was as if the scepter were alive, aware of his presence, and perhaps even judging his worthiness. A voice whispered through his mind, distant but clear. Theron, the labyrinth will not release you until you have made your choice. You must decide whether to walk in the light of the truth or turn away, knowing that the world will remain unchanged. The scepter will not guide you in your decision, for it is not its place to choose. Theron's grip on the scepter tightened as the weight of the decision ahead of him pressed down. He thought of his people, of the land he called home, of the generations who had come before him. Could he leave the labyrinth with such power? Could he return to the world knowing the truth of its past, knowing the terrible consequences that would follow? He looked back at the passageway through which he had come, the path that had led him to the heart of the labyrinth. It seemed so far away now, distant and faded, as though the path itself had been swallowed by the vastness of time. Suddenly, the air around him seemed to crackle with a new intensity. The voice, now growing stronger, echoed through the chamber once more. You must decide, Theron. The labyrinth is shifting, closing in around you. You cannot stay here forever. Will you take the knowledge you have gained and return to the world, or will you leave it behind? Theron closed his eyes, letting the silence of the moment wash over him. The scepter hummed softly in his hands, urging him to act. He could feel the truth swirling around him, as real as the air he breathed. He could feel the weight of it, but it was not something that could be carried alone. The world would change, and so would he. His voice, when he finally spoke, was firm, carrying the weight of his decision. I will take the knowledge. I will face the consequences. The labyrinth seemed to sigh in response, as if the ancient structure itself had been holding its breath. The stone walls shifted once more, the passageway at the far end of the chamber opening wide. Theron stepped forward, his heart heavy but resolute. The scepter's light dimmed, and the chamber seemed to settle, its once erratic energy now calm. As he moved through the passage, the weight of the decision felt different now. The knowledge, the burden, had settled within him. It was no longer a source of fear, but a responsibility. He was no longer just a seeker of power, he was a keeper of truth. The labyrinth had shown him the way, but it was his path to walk alone. Theron walked through the darkened corridors of the labyrinth, the air now cool and thick with the scent of ancient stone and dust. His mind swirled with the weight of the scepter's power, but there was something more, something deeper that tugged at his thoughts. It was the knowledge that had surged through him, the realization that the world had been shaped not only by the forces of gods and men, but by the choices made in the shadows of history. With each step, the once mysterious, intimidating maze now felt different. The walls, which had seemed to shift and change before, were now calm. The labyrinth seemed to have accepted his decision, its energy no longer pulsing with overwhelming force. It was as though the trials had been necessary for him to see the world for what it truly was, but that his journey was not yet complete. As Theron reached the end of the long corridor, a familiar sensation gripped him. The labyrinth had done its part in guiding him, but he had come to realize that the real challenge lay ahead, outside of these walls, in the realm he had left behind. His eyes adjusted to the light at the entrance, and the first rays of dawn poured through the opening. He could see the sprawling landscape before him, vast and untamed. His heart skipped a beat. The world was waiting for him, but it would never be the same again. Theron stepped into the sunlight, the scepter in his grasp. The weight of his decision was still fresh, but now that he was back in the world, he knew the true consequences of his choice began to take shape. He had chosen to carry the truth, to bear the weight of the past, but the future was uncertain. The wind whipped through his hair as he gazed out at the horizon, a deep sense of responsibility settling upon him. He could feel the eyes of his people on him already, the way their lives would shift with his return. They would look to him not just as a warrior or a leader, but as something more. Someone who had seen the raw, unfiltered truth of the world. But could they bear the truth? Could they handle the knowledge of the scepter? As these thoughts ran through his mind, the faint sound of footsteps echoed behind him. Theron turned, recognizing the familiar face of Sarah, her determined stride cutting through the silence. She had always been a constant in his journey, a warrior who shared his cause. "Theron," she called out softly, as if unsure of the right words to say. "You've returned." Theron nodded, his voice steady but filled with a weight she could not yet understand. I've returned, but things will not be the same. The labyrinth has shown me the truth of the world, and now it is up to me to decide what to do with it. Zara stepped closer, her brow furrowed in thought. You hold the scepter now. You're more than a warrior. You're a keeper of something ancient, something that could change everything. But are you ready to face what that means? The world won't stand still, Theron. You can't just walk away from the responsibility. Theron's gaze hardened as he looked down at the scepter. Its power was still there, humming softly in his hands, urging him to act. He had no illusions about what lay ahead. He had seen the visions, the history of the world unfurling before him like a map of endless possibilities and endless suffering. I'm not walking away, he said, his voice resolute. But the world has to change, and I won't be the one to dictate how that happens. The knowledge I carry is not mine to wield for power. It is a burden, and I will share that burden. It is not just about me anymore. Zara studied him for a moment, her eyes searching for something she could not quite place. Then what will you do with it? What happens now? Theron sighed deeply, his thoughts swirling as he gazed at the scepter, still glowing faintly in the early morning light. He did not have all the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He could not keep this power to himself. He had already made that choice. The knowledge was not for conquest, not for dominion, not even for salvation. It was for the world, and that meant guiding it with wisdom, with understanding, and most importantly, with compassion. I will gather those who are worthy of this knowledge, he said. I will share it with those who seek the truth, those who understand that power must always be tempered with restraint. We will rebuild what has been broken, not with force, but with understanding. Zara nodded, her expression softening. Then we are in this together. I'll help you, Theron. We'll make sure that this knowledge isn't lost again, but it won't be easy. There will be those who seek to use it for their own gain. Theron's expression grew stern as he looked into the distance, the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. I know, but we can't let fear dictate our actions. The truth is a powerful thing, Zara. It can either destroy us or set us free. We must choose the path that leads us to freedom. Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm. Then let's choose wisely. The two of them stood together, looking out at the world before them, knowing that the journey had only just begun. The labyrinth had shown them the past, but it was now their responsibility to shape the future. And with the scepter in hand, Theron knew that he was no longer just a man. He was a guardian of truth, and that would be the legacy he left behind. As the first rays of sunlight bathed the land, Theron and Zara began their journey back to the village. The path ahead was long and fraught with uncertainty, yet there was a newfound sense of purpose in Theron's heart. The Scepter of Amun-Ra pulsed softly in his grip, a reminder of the power he carried and the heavy responsibility it demanded. It was a weight that would only grow heavier with each step he took. The village lay at the foot of the mountains, nestled between the towering cliffs and dense forests. From the hills above, the once familiar sights looked different now, as if viewed through a new lens, a lens that saw not only what was, but what could be. The scepter had opened his eyes to the potential for change, for the healing of old wounds, but it also showed the depths of the darkness that had plagued the land for centuries. Zara walked beside him in silence, her gaze fixed ahead. She understood the gravity of the situation, and although she had always been his staunch ally, even she could not fully comprehend the extent of what Theron had witnessed in the labyrinth. The truth of the world, now laid bare before him, was both a gift and a curse. When they reached the village, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The people had heard rumors of their return, whispers of the scepter, and the changes that had come with it. They gathered around, their faces filled with curiosity, fear, and hope. Theron stood before them, his figure tall and resolute, Zara by his side. The crowd quieted as he raised the scepter high, its glow casting an ethereal light upon the assembled villagers. "People of Weset-Minos," Theron began, his voice strong but filled with the weight of his new-found wisdom. "The world we have known is not the world as it truly is. What I carry with me is the Scepter of Amun-Ra, a symbol of divine power, but more than that, it is a key to the knowledge of the past and the potential for a new future." A murmur spread through the crowd, but Theron held up his hand to silence them. He could feel their uncertainty, their need for answers, and he was ready to give them what they sought, but it would not come easily. "I have seen the truth," he continued, "the hidden history that has shaped our world. The gods are not the only forces at play here. There are ancient powers that have influenced our lives in ways we cannot yet understand. The labyrinth revealed this to me, and now it is up to us, together, to decide how to move forward." Zara stepped forward, her voice a steady anchor to his words. "We are no longer simply warriors or villagers, leaders or followers. We are guardians of the truth, of the knowledge that has been passed down through the ages, and it is our duty to protect this knowledge, to use it not for power, but for the greater good." A long silence followed, the weight of their words settling into the hearts of those who listened. Theron could see the mixture of awe and fear in their eyes. They were not ready for this revelation, not entirely, but they would be, in time. One voice broke through the silence, a young man, his face filled with doubt. "But how can we trust this truth? How do we know you are not deceived by the power of the scepter? What if it has twisted your mind, changed you into something we no longer recognize?" Theron met his gaze, unflinching. "I understand your fear. The scepter is not a tool to be wielded recklessly. It does not offer easy answers, only the harsh truth of what has come before us. But we must face it, or we will remain trapped in a cycle of ignorance and suffering. I am not the same man I was when I entered the labyrinth, and I do not expect you to blindly follow me, but I ask you to see the truth for yourselves." Zara nodded in agreement. "We will work together, each of us playing our part, to ensure that this knowledge does not lead us into darkness. But we cannot turn away from it, not anymore." The young man seemed to hesitate, then slowly lowered his head. There were others who shared his doubts, but as they saw the resolve in Theron and Zara's eyes, something shifted in the air. The villagers, once divided by fear and uncertainty, began to unite in their shared desire for something greater. One by one, the people approached Theron, some with reverence, others with a more cautious curiosity. They knelt before him, not to worship, but to acknowledge the truth that he bore. They had seen the signs. Their world was changing, and the scepter was the key to that change. As the crowd dispersed, a sense of uneasy peace settled over the village. The people would have to come to terms with the knowledge Theron had brought back with him. It would not be easy, but it was the only path forward. Theron turned to Zara, his expression solemn. "This is only the beginning. The truth is out, but now we must guard it. We must ensure it does not fall into the wrong hands." Zara nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination that burned within him. "We will, Theron, together." And so the two of them stood at the edge of the village, looking out at the horizon once more. The Scepter of Amun-Ra, now a symbol of their shared responsibility, glowed faintly in the light of the setting sun. The world had changed, and they would be its stewards, guardians of the truth, protectors of the past, and architects of the future. As days turned into weeks, the village of Weset-Minos began to transform. The revelation of the Scepter of Amun-Ra had shaken the very foundation of their beliefs, yet it had also sparked a new hope. The villages, once divided by old wounds and distrust, now found themselves united by a common cause. They had seen the truth through Theron's eyes, and though it was difficult to fully accept, they recognized the importance of what had been uncovered. Theron spent countless hours with the elders, sharing the knowledge from the labyrinth, deciphering ancient texts and rituals that had been long forgotten. The scepter, now safely stored in the heart of the village's temple, served as a symbol of the new path they had to follow, a path fraught with challenges but also filled with possibilities. Zara, too, had her hands full. As a warrior, she took on the responsibility of training the village's young men and women, preparing them for a time when they would need to defend not just their village, but the truth that now bound them all. The labyrinth had shown them that there were darker forces at work in the world, forces that would stop at nothing to seize the power hidden in the ancient relics of the gods. Zara knew that the village needed to be strong, not just in body, but in spirit. Meanwhile, Theron spent time meditating on the visions he had received in the labyrinth. The scepter had shown him glimpses of the past, and though he had not yet fully understood them, he knew there were more answers to be found. The knowledge he carried was a double-edged sword. It could save the world, but it could also destroy it. He had to tread carefully, for even the slightest misstep could have far-reaching consequences. One evening, as Theron walked along the edge of the village, the familiar feeling of unease settled over him once again. The weight of the scepter, always heavy in his mind, seemed to grow with each passing day. He had come to realize that the power it contained was not just a tool for leadership. It was a test, one that he was unsure he was ready to face. As he sat near the old stone well, his thoughts were interrupted by the soft rustling of leaves. He turned to see Zara approaching, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun. "Theron," she said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "You've been distant lately. The weight of the scepter is taking its toll on you. You need to rest." Theron met her gaze, the lines of worry etched deep into his face. "I can't rest, Zara. Not yet. There's too much at stake. I still don't fully understand the power of the scepter, and the visions I've seen. They trouble me. I fear that what we are trying to protect may be more dangerous than we realize." Zara sat down beside him, her gaze never leaving his. "You are not alone in this, Theron. We are all in this together. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself." He looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "But I do. The scepter chose me. I cannot pass it on to another. If the power it contains is as dangerous as I fear, then it is my responsibility to control it." Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "The scepter may have chosen you, but we have all chosen this path. We are the guardians of this truth, and we will protect it, no matter the cost. You do not have to bear this alone." Theron nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. "I know. I feel the weight of it all. The future of the world depends on the decisions I make, and I can't shake the fear that I may not be strong enough." Zara's voice softened. "We have all faced fear, Theron, but it is not the fear that defines us. It is how we respond to it. The labyrinth showed you the truth, but it is up to you to decide how to use that truth, and you will not make this journey alone." They sat in silence for a moment, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village. The peaceful night seemed to offer a brief respite from the tension that had gripped Theron's heart. But deep down, he knew that the true challenge was just beginning. The following morning, as the village came alive with the sounds of preparation for the coming days, Theron received a visitor. The elder Khepri arrived at his home with an air of urgency. "Theron," Khepri said, his voice grave, "there is something you need to see." The elder led Theron to the temple where the scepter was kept. As they entered the chamber, the golden relic sat upon its pedestal, its glow pulsing faintly. But something had changed. The air in the room felt heavier, charged with an energy that Theron had not sensed before. Capri motioned for Theron to approach. "It is time," he said. "The scepter is calling you. It is ready to show you what you need to know." Theron hesitated, but then stepped forward. As he reached for the scepter, the energy in the room surged. A vision overtook him. Flashes of ancient battles, gods clashing in the heavens, and the dark forces that had sought to control the scepter throughout history. And then he saw something that made his heart stop. An army rising from the shadows, marching toward Weset-Minos. Their leader was cloaked in darkness, their eyes burning with a fierce, unnatural light. The vision was fleeting, but its meaning was clear. A storm was coming, a storm that threatened not only the village, but the entire world. Theron withdrew his hand from the scepter, breathless and shaken. "We must prepare," he said, his voice firm with the resolve of someone who had seen the future and understood the consequences of inaction. Zara arrived moments later, her presence bringing a sense of calm amidst the chaos. "What is it?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Theron looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. "An army is coming, led by a force more powerful than we can imagine. We must stand ready. Thank you for listening. The next episode of this story will be coming soon. To ensure you don't miss it, please subscribe to the channel and enable notifications by clicking the bell icon. Good night.